I see that y'all are out there, and we're a little less than 3 minutes away from getting started. So we're gonna get going here in just a little bit. Good morning. We are gonna get started here with Google Domination. This is episode 5, and we're gonna be talking about Google Slides today, actually. And so I'm gonna do a little transition here and get my desktop where you can see it. And I'll still be here, and we'll get going. So you can see I've got an agenda up here on googledomination.org, and so we'll kind of talk about some of the basic things of Google Slides and then go just a bit more in depth with this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and open my example slideshow just as a review. When you're using Google Drive, you always create something new from that big New button. As a reminder, a lot of people will go to docs.google.com and open something new from there. I prefer to open everything new in Drive. If you go to slides.google.com, you'll see all of your slideshows. That would be kind of like opening PowerPoint and seeing all of your PowerPoints that you could open at the same time. It's kind of that same idea. So I have already created an example slideshow for us to get started on. And so we will go from here. So when you first open Google Slides, when you open a brand new one, you'll get a default pop-up on the right-hand side that has a theme for you to pick. And so if I click this theme button right here, and I probably need to make my toolbar a bit larger. I think that would probably be helpful for you. So this is kind of what it would look like when you first open a brand new slideshow. The default theme is this simple, what they call simple light. And there are a lot of themes here. You can import themes with this button here at the bottom. I don't think I'm covering that up. You can import a theme. They have some very simple things. Of course, you can change these themes. You can't really save a theme to be able to access from other presentations necessarily. So that's one disadvantage, but I don't put a whole lot of stock into themes necessarily. I have a tendency to go in and create something of my own. For instance, if I were going to do this for SNU, I would probably come in here and just change the theme up a little bit. So let's say that I go in and I choose this as my theme. Then I can change that text and all of that, but the thing, probably one of the things that people miss out the most on in Google Slides or even in PowerPoint is by going into the slide menu and editing the master slide. If you edit the master slide and do that initially, then as you create new slides, you don't have to continue changing stuff all the time. And what I mean by that is if I come in here to this very top slide, which is the master, and I change this color to something closer to SNU's color, then notice on all of these other layout slides, it changes that color as well. But on like this slide, since I only changed the text color, so maybe I need to take this background. I can change the background color right here, and I'll change it to that same kind of dark crimson red, and then maybe this one, I change that background to something more like this, and we'll go with done. And I could go in and I could change this square right here. I could change that color as well and do things like that. So you can go in on your master slide and get all these colors the way that you want them so that you have a cohesive theme. And let me do this one last one. And I'm just changing all of these things. And so now I have this sort of custom theme that's not listed over here. But it took me, what, a minute or 2 minutes? And so when I get done with that, then I can close out my master slide. And now I'm back over here and I have, excuse me, I can't change the color of that. I'd have to go back into that master slide to do that. And so here's my presentation by Jody Bowie. So we go from there. One of the other things that I kind of like to do that's a little bit custom is back on that master slide. If I go back to the master slide, I can go here at the top and I can actually put a little image down here in the bottom corner, and it would put that image on every one of these slides. For instance, if I take this ridiculous profile picture that I have and I just drag it here and put it on this image, or put it on this slide rather. Now of course I don't want that to be that big. That's too big. And I see now that that's actually behind my picture, behind my video here. So I'm going to move this over just a little bit. There we go. And so I have this image on my master slide, and I can take that and I can make it quite a bit smaller. And so this gives some branding, and I don't actually recommend putting your face on there, but that's a small picture that I had on my desktop. I was goofing around with Photoshop the other day and making some goofy profile pictures. I always like a profile picture that will leave an impression with people. So this is actually one for my personal Gmail. So now when I close out of the master, You can see it. So that could be your presentation logo. That could be your Twitter handle. You could make that into a link that would take you to Twitter. You know, there are lots of things that you could do with that. You could put an Instagram icon down there and have that link to your Instagram, those kinds of things. I've done that before so that when you put this presentation out and you share it with others, those images are there, and if they're linked, then that's an easy way for them to get in touch with you. It could even be a link to your email. So now, whenever I create a new slide, you see that my goofy image is still here at the bottom. And so here's slide or topic number 1. And I add some text here. Okay, so you can change anything in that master slide. You can change it so that your texts are bigger, so that you're using more of the screen, so that you're using less of the screen, whatever. But I do like this idea of having some sort of brand on there. I went to a school the other day and did a presentation, and one quick way to give your presentations a little bit of pop is to say you're going out to a school, go to their website, get their logo. This was a wolf, I think, was the image that I got, and I pulled it right off of their website. I put it down in the corner of each of my slides. I made my theme their colors, and as I created my presentation and I presented it to them, they were seeing something that was familiar to them. So I think that's a good way. It's a little something over the top. It's a little extra, rather than just having some plain Jane, something that has no connection to your audience. A lot of times when you go to a conference, they'll send you a template presentation, but sometimes I'll go into that master and I'll add some of my own things, like my Twitter handle and things like that, or maybe I'll link to something else. So also, of course, you could brand yourself if you have a brand. You could do all of your presentations as your own brand and create some custom themes and those kinds of things. So changing themes around and making those more personable, making your slides more personable using the edit master right there, okay? So while I'm here on the slide, there are several things that you can see here, and you can apply a different layout to a slide. So if I have this layout, this current layout, but I want to change that layout, I could do something like this. And now I can add some more. And so now I have 2 columns. I have 2 columns of text in my slide. Sorry, this keeps popping back. It's because of my mouse. It's not a Google Slides thing that's causing that. So now I have that in 2 columns, and so you can change the layout, and that's under the slide menu. The other thing you can do is you can apply transitions. So Google Slides used to be very, very basic and did not have transitions. I even remember a time when there was no way to animate stuff. But now they have the same kinds of transitions that pretty much every other presentation software has. They probably just don't have all of them. So maybe they have you like the flip transition. You also can, in this transitions, you can also do your animation. So you can have this text over here, and I just made that into a fade in on click by paragraph. So each line of text would come in. So if I had more than one line of text here, text 2, text 3, and so on. And so if I highlight this box and I'm by paragraph, then each of these different pieces of text would require a click, and those texts would come in. And of course you have different things flying in and out, zooming in, all of that kind of stuff. Animation is not something that I do very much of, but it's there if you need it, if you want to do something with that. And those are the kinds of things. This is no different than PowerPoint. There may be less transitions, but in all honesty, as a professional, I much rather would see good content than Flash. That's just a personal thing. I've always been that way. I rarely do a bunch of transitions or animations. It's usually going to be something like a pier or maybe a fade in, but I'm never going to have stuff flying in and bouncing back and forth and stuff like that. It's just not. That's just not something that I do. I don't think that's necessary. That's great if you're a 7th or 8th grader and you're showing that you know how to do something. But as far as a professional presentation, that's not something you're going to do anyway. So, but those transitions and for the slide transitions, and then animations for text and objects on your screen. Okay, so speaking of objects on your screen, one of the things that I've learned in using Photoshop, kind of just playing around with Photoshop, is to think about things in layers. And that's something really nice. If you begin to think about layering pieces onto a slide, you can do some really nice professional things as far as when things are revealed to people. That's when I would actually use some sort of animation, is if I need to reveal something else, either laid on top of another object or something like that. So let's say that I go and I'll insert an image, and I'll just use their search the web real quick, which is nice, that I can just do a Google search for images over here. And we'll go with supercars. And I'll just pick an image. This one looks like a good one. I just want to insert that image here. And so it automatically, if it's a nice big image like that, it'll make it that size. I'm going to hold down the Shift button, though, so that I keep the aspect ratio. There are few things that I despise more seeing a presentation than to see something like that, or to see something like that. That is so unprofessional to me. Pixelated images or images that are out of proportion. So I'm going to undo those two things and go back to my original, the original aspect ratio, which is the ratio of the width to the height. And this is in the original image. So the way I maintain that is by holding the Shift button down and then grab the corner, and it adjusts the height and the width respectively, but keeps it all in proportion to one another. Now, maybe this image is, maybe I don't like the way this image is cropped. Rather than using a image editing software like Photoshop and working on it there and then putting it in here, there are a ton of things that you can do with this image just natively in Google Slides. So one of the first things you can do is you can crop the image, and it's not a destructive crop. And by that I mean you still have the image there. You can always go back and undo this. So you double click the image and you get this black bounding box around that. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hit enter to get that off of there. I'm going to make this bigger so you can kind of see what I'm doing, because I want you to be able to see that black bounding box really well. Okay, so double click the image and I get this black bounding box. And so I'm going to take this and I'm going to pull this down where I'm seeing more of the car and less of everything that is around it, like that. So number one, this image is kind of poor in that it's crooked. You can see that the lines in the background do not line up with the edge of my frame, but when I get it cropped like I want it, I just hit return, and now I have that as my image. So I'm going to maintain this aspect ratio again by hitting the Shift button, and I'll pull it down here, and I'll just put it down. Maybe that's wherever I want my image to be. I just click and drag it. And the nice thing is you probably see some red lines popping up as I move this around the screen. So for instance, this is centered with my text box on the right side. This is centered with my text box on the, actually that's aligned to the left. This would be centered with that text box. This would be aligned with the edge of the text box. So maybe I want it in the center of the slide itself, and that is the exact center. If I can get it, that's the exact center of the slide right there. So it has some native things built in, as a lot of other programs do, as far as moving things around and aligning things together. But here's the other thing: you have this arrange right here, and so if I select multiple things, let's say that I have my image here and I don't want to drag it around until I see all these red lines. I'm going to select this box right here, and this box is actually behind this car image. I'm going to hold down the Shift button to select multiple objects, and so now I've selected the car and that image. And if I go to the Arrange button right here, I can change the order where I can bring things to the front, bring them to the back, those sort of things. But this Align button is really nice, where I can center align those two things, and it kind of takes up the difference, and maybe I need to move that back. So I'm going to undo that. Maybe. There we go. I'll go back to Arrange, into that Align button again. And if I want to left align, this will align that car image with the left side of this box, and so on. So you've got several things here that you can do. You can actually group things together. So if I undo, and if I have these two things selected, if I have multiple things, oops, I have multiple things selected, maybe I want to select everything. I'll just drag and select all of that. So now I have both text boxes and the car. And under Arrange, for some reason it's not giving me the option to group these, and I don't know why. But I could distribute them so that they're all evenly spaced. I could distribute them vertically so that they're evenly spaced vertically. So don't be afraid to select multiple objects and use this Arrange so that you have things evenly spaced. You can drag and drop things across the screen, and it will pop up with some little blue lines on either side, so that you know that you have, like if I have this and I want to, well, it's not doing that right now, but I thought it would show you when it's evenly spaced, but for some reason it's not doing that. But that's okay. Oh, there we go. It just did it right there. So now this is showing you that the car is the same exact width as the right-hand text box, and you can see that by those blue lines on the bottom. And if I keep dragging this, and make it even larger, eventually I'll get it where it shows me that it's the same width as this slide box at the box at the top where it says Slide Topic 1. There we go. That blue line is showing me that now my car is the same width as the Slide Topic box at the top. So something to think about. It'll pop up some nice things. Even it just showed me a height. This is now the same height as both of my text boxes. So if I drug this up here and aligned it with my text boxes, it would cover both of those text boxes completely, except for this little bit of text sticking out over here. But as far as the width of the boxes or height of the boxes, it's the same height. Okay, So let's continue talking about this image because there's a couple of other things we can do with it. You might have noticed once the image is selected, you get this format options. You can also find this under the format menu over here. And this goes for text. This goes for images. It does not matter. So I've got my format options box open. And so here I have size and position, where it is, how to rotate it, all those kinds of things. Have lots and lots of options there. Maybe I want to recolor it. So maybe I like this better because it goes more with the color of my slide, which that's a little orange. Maybe we'll go with something like that that gets it a little bit better as far as my theme goes. I still think maybe there might be a better option here, but you've got a lot of options for recoloring, so I'll leave that alone. Maybe you need it to be somewhat transparent where you can see something in the back. Maybe you even want to make this you could actually make this the background without actually making it the background. So I'm just going to pull it to be the size of the whole screen. And I'm going to keep increasing that transparency until I get what I like. And I can play with the contrast and things like that. And notice I have not gone in to my slide and done change background, although I could do that. But this gives me the ability to play with these things, to play with the adjustments, transparency, brightness, and contrast. And if I don't like what I've done, I can just reset and it goes back to what it was. But I'm going to go ahead and it's not going to let me do that. Okay, so I'm going to increase my transparency, turn my brightness down, turn my contrast down a little bit even more, maybe tweak that. And then I'm going to right click on that image, and under the order I'm going to be sure and send that to the back so that everything on the slide is going to be in front of that image. I'm actually just going to move it over just a little bit. I'm just using the arrow key because the car itself was not quite centered on the screen. The image, it doesn't matter the image, but the car itself. So I'm going to hit enter. I hate this mouse sometimes. It drives me a little crazy. Okay, so for format options, it's just keeping this box open. I can select an object to see the format options. So I'm going to select this text up here at the top. I'm just going to highlight all that text. And so I can change the fit of the text in the box and those kinds of things, but probably we're more interested in something like this. So if I put a drop shadow on something, you're probably familiar with the drop shadow, and I'm gonna not actually hold on to that text. I'm just going to change it where I don't have the text selected. And let me turn my transparency down where you can actually see what's happening here a little easier. I'm going to make the distance of the drop shadow a little more and change that blur radius just a little bit so it's kind of fuzzy. And maybe I want to change the color of that drop shadow. That's way too light. It could be orange. That's hideous looking, but you get the picture, no pun intended. I can actually change so I have this drop shadow, and it gives some depth to your slide. Gives some depth, and you can even go in. I could go into the master slide, and I could put this drop shadow on that box for that text. And now I just want to be sure that you see that it only does it to the actual, it only does that to the actual text, not to the box. Doesn't put a border or anything around it. But if you get really fancy and if it's appropriate, you could actually put a reflection on it. That's probably not appropriate in this case, and you can change that transparency where you just get a hint of a reflection. So lots and lots of things that you can do here. I mean, this used to be you never would have heard of anything like this. I'm changing the size on my reflection because I want it to be much less. You never used to be able to do anything like this in Google Slides. So probably I just want to point out that as far as formatting goes, you can do some pretty slick things with Google Slides. It's certainly not so overwhelming that you would get in and go, well, I don't have any idea what any of this stuff does. But you can go in and do some things that really set your slideshows apart from other people's. I mean, I started with no theme, then I added a theme, and then I changed that theme. And on this particular slide, I've even got a different background without actually going into the background of the slide. So lots of things that you can do there. We can duplicate slides, skip slides. So formatting, you know, if you need your text to be in different formats, of course, you have all kinds of text formatting that you can do. This also, some new things recently are changing the size, the font size, changing the color, but capitalization, you can actually change the capitalization, which is interesting. And I could go back and change that back to like a title case and so on. So without having to go in and retype things, you can easily you can change the capitalization on your text. Of course, if you want to highlight or something like that, subscripts and superscripts, it's great for math and science and things like that. Strike through if you're showing something that you've deleted but you still want to be able to see that it was there is one of the ways that I have a tendency to do that. Bullets and numbering, and of course these are all here in the menu, excuse me, in the toolbar. But it's nice to see them in a menu format rather than just having a bunch of buttons at the top. So let's make that a bulleted list. And of course you have lots of options on what your bulleted list looks like. I'm just going to choose, this one. It's more like kind of like a checkbox sort of thing, right? Okay, what else do we need to talk about here? We've got the edit menu, the view menu. That's another way to get to the master slide rather than going on the slide menu is view master. Viewing animations. If you want to zoom, of course you have speaker notes at the bottom. You can snap things to a grid. You can show guides. Show your guides. So that gives me, that's not going to show up when I present the slideshow, but if I'm arranging things on a slide, it's kind of nice to be able to have a guide, and that'll show up on each of your slides. And of course I can go in and turn those guides off. So just hit turn guides off. Okay. Let's see what else we need here. Of course we have an insert button. And so last week, one of the things that I talked about was inserting a chart into a Google Doc. And we pulled that chart from a spreadsheet. So we created the chart in the spreadsheet, and then we imported that chart into a Google document, and it's a live chart. So that means that if the data on my chart changes in my spreadsheet, then I'm so sorry, my phone is going crazy here. Hopefully it's not an emergency. I should check. No, I don't think that's an emergency. Okay, just making sure. Sorry about that. Then in my document, it'll give me an update button where in my document I can update the chart without doing anything else. It's one button click. You can do that same exact thing. So let me actually add a new slide, and I can do that with this by choosing a layout. So maybe I want to have just a caption, and this is going to be, my caption is first, third, fifth, and that's the same one that I used last week. I pulled a chart out of there. And so I'm going to go insert a chart from Sheets. And this is going to pull up my spreadsheets. And I'm going to look here and see if I can find that example chart that I had last week without doing a whole lot of searching for it. And of course, I don't easily see it, so I'll just type in example. It probably would have been a whole lot easier. And there's my example spreadsheet. That's the one I used last week. And this is going to show me all the charts that are in that spreadsheet. So I'll just select this first chart. And there is, it automatically pulls it in. It's got the color scheme from my spreadsheet. And so again, I just drug that until I saw the red lines. But I can arrange this. I can center it on the page horizontally, and I can center it on the page vertically, or I can select both of these two things and I can arrange them, I can align them to, how do I want to do this? If I align them to the top, yeah, that's what I was afraid of. I never can remember the correct alignment to choose. I really want to align the bottom of this with the top of this. So it's probably easier if I just drag them around like that. So I can do something like that. And so if my data changes in my spreadsheet, the next time I open this slideshow, I would have a little update button right about there is where I would see an update button. I'd click update and it would update it to the most current data. So that's a nice thing. Of course, let's go ahead and create another new slide, and we'll just pick a blank slide, completely blank. And we're going to insert a diagram of some kind. And so you've got tons and tons of diagrams over here. And these are nice looking diagrams. Again, we want to set our stuff apart. And so you can choose from how many levels you need, what color you want it to be. So I really want that to be something a little more in line with my red theme that I've been going with. And so that looks a little bit better. And so I have the manager, and I have the assistant manager. Oops, I need to select all of that. Assistant manager, and then I have the workers and so on. So if you're showing, you could show anything from family tree to organizational chart to who knows what you might be doing. But that's a hierarchy chart. Maybe you're going to show like a process type chart like this. And I need to go get rid of that other chart. Let's undo this. And let me get this chart and get this whole thing. So basically what this is this is a pre-made drawing, because you can insert Google Drawings as well. But this is a really nice way to show information. There's lots of different ones you can do here. So I think I've beat that dead horse long enough. And we will go back to our insert menu. Get rid of this. Get rid of these extra boxes that I've got open over here. And I really need to get rid of that. Get rid of that. 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 Those are all grouped together. Okay, so I could insert a video. Now, here's a way that you can use a video in a presentation and it actually be useful rather than everyone's just sitting watching a video. One of the things that I try to do whenever I have presentations is I try to do things so that there's some built-in discussion. So if you have built-in discussion, why not search for a 2-minute timer on YouTube? And this is actually one that I use regularly. This is a radial timer, which is nice. So we'll select this radial timer. And it's going to put the video, it's going to put it right in the middle of the screen. That is not at all where I want that. Go back to that slide. And I'm going to select that and make this a whole lot smaller. And I'm going to take that 2-minute video and I'm going to put it up here in the top corner of my slide. And then when I'm presenting and I see this screen, then I have my 2-minute timer up here, and when I get ready to use that, I present my information, I talk to everyone, and then I click play on the 2-minute timer up here, and I start the 2-minute timer, and then everybody's talking, and we have this built-in timer that shows us how much time we have left. And so I don't know if you can see that, but the timer is counting down. Now this one is interesting because you don't actually see how much time you have left. So if that's a problem for you, and it's making a little beeping sound, I don't know if you can hear that. But anyway, something to think about. Maybe that's a useful tip for you, even if you get nothing else out of this. Maybe inserting a timer on your slide would be useful for you. That's especially useful rather than going back and forth between a timer, because you can, in Chrome, you can just search 2-minute timer and it'll start a 2-minute timer for you as soon as you hit return. But this gives you a little video, and then you can actually take that 2-minute timer when you get it where you want it, and just copy that and go to your other slides and paste it. And go to your other slides and paste it, and it puts it in the exact same spot on every single slide. You could also put that into your master if you wanted to, and choose which of the types of slides you would want that 2-minute timer. So basically every time you create that type of slide, you've got a 2-minute timer. Something to think about. Okay, what else do we have here in the insert menu that we can look at before we move on? Oh my, it's 40 minutes gone already. Okay, so I won't talk a whole lot more about these things because there are a few other things I want to be sure I get to. But there is some word art here. I'm not a huge fan of word art, but if you are, that's there for you. Of course, you can put tables and shapes, text boxes and images, just like inserting an image on a Google document or a Google Sheet. Same sorts of ways where you're searching the web, Drive, pulling from your Google Photos, or even from the camera. So, I mean, I could do this right here, and it's probably not going to pull my camera up. I'm going to actually block that because you all are seeing my camera. So I'm going to close out of that. But I could take a picture of myself and put it right here on my slideshow. I don't know why you'd want to do that. I've already got one picture of myself on there. We don't need any more, I don't think. So, okay, so let's check out the Tools menu, because there's all kinds of good things always hidden in the Tools menu. If I can get it to open. For some reason, my CPU usage is really high. There we go. So I can voice type into the speaker notes, which is really nice, as far as rather than, you can do that just like you can in Google Docs, where you can talk about the things that you want to say, and it puts it right down there into your speaker notes. So that's nice. Accessibility settings. I would recommend that you turn on screen reader support. It doesn't hurt anything. Why wouldn't you want to do this? And so that's all automatic. It's going to work by itself in the background. It doesn't change the look of anything. And I don't know why that's not turned on by default, but it is. There you go. So Q&A history. So let's talk about Q&A. So when you go over to the Present menu, probably most of you simply click on the Start Presentation. But if you click this drop down, you can actually do a presenter view. Now, this is really only useful if you have multiple screens. Well, that's not necessarily true. What this is going to do is this is going to give you two different things. So it's going to give you, and I need to show you my desktop now so that you can see everything that I'm seeing. So I'm going to go away. So when you're looking at your desktop, this big image in the background is what would be showing on your big screen up in front of the class or group or whatever. And then this smaller screen right here is what you would see what you would see on your small screen in front of you. And so if you click over into the audience tools, and I'm actually going to make this window quite a bit bigger because this is one of the things that is just really cool, and I bet you none of you have probably ever heard of this. And I found it quite by accident. But it gives you a timer down here, which is nice. But the best thing about this audience tools is you can start a Q&A session. And so what this Q&A session does is it allows people in your audience to go to a website, which it gives the website here at the top of every one of your slides. It automatically puts it into your presentation. And if they go to that web address, they can send you questions and those appear here. You're still seeing what slide you're on over here on this part of the screen, and I know you can't see my point. Well, you can too see my pointer. Good. You have the ability to go to different slides. Your speaker notes are right here, so you can toggle between speaker notes and your Q&A. If you want to lock the questions to only questions within your domain, that is going to show you who is asking the question, for one, but you can turn that off. Oh, I closed the question. Sorry. I meant to change this. Accept questions from anyone. I just clicked in the wrong place. And so you can turn those questions on and off, as you saw that I did there. And so when you turn that off, you can see in the background that the address goes away for your questions address. And those will appear here. So the reason that's important is I have a tendency to ask a student to hold their question and let me finish this thought. Unfortunately, I may go a little longer than I should with finishing that thought, and that causes the student to forget their question. So this way, they submit their questions, and if I, let's see, I just transitioned. So let me actually go submit a question real quick. I'll just go here and submit a question to myself. And so this is what people would see when they're in asking a question. And so they can choose to ask anonymously, and I think that's something that you can turn off. So why are you so awesome at presenting? And I'll submit that. And so, again, other people in the Q&A would see this on their screen, and they can upvote or downvote things. And so you would also see that over here on your screen. So I've had a question, and I can see the number of upvotes and downvotes. And so that's on my slideshow. I'm going to pull this back up where you can see it in front. So what you can do is you're presenting your slideshow and you want to put that question on the screen, it shows who asked the question and it shows the question. So you could see how this would be useful in somewhere where you have a distributed audience. Not everyone is in the same place, so you want to allow people to ask questions that way. I'm going to hide this question, and I'm going to pull this back up. So if you have a distributed audience, if you have students in your class who are afraid to speak up for fear of asking a dumb question, maybe you would say, okay, ask your questions anonymously, and then there's no fear of, well, who asked this question or who asked that question, but it gives everyone in the class the ability to vote questions to the top. So you can see which question needs to be answered the most, because a lot of research shows that if one student has a question, often there will be other people with the same question. And so people can upvote questions or downvote questions. Probably you're going to be more concerned with the upvotes because people are going to say, oh, I have that question too. And that allows for what a lot of people call a back channel in a presentation. And it's kind of this other conversation that's going on along with your presentation, kind of parallel to that, but it's not at the front of the room. It's the audience talking amongst themselves while you're still presenting. So anyway, that's one of my favorite things about Google Slides, is the ability to have this question and answer period that's going on in the background. So I'm going to close out of this, and we're going to get out of our presentation. Maybe we're going to get out of it. There we go. So remember, under the Tools menu, there is the Q&A history, so you can see what questions were asked, what the downvotes and upvotes were. So this gives you the ability to come back later if you don't have time to present all those questions, or you want to follow up with someone or whatever. I mean, even I was guessing this might even give you a link to them, but I guess it doesn't. I thought it might. Okay, let's check out the add-ons. We have not yet even begun to get to the awesomeness, but I'm going to talk quickly about the Slides Toolbox and then add-ons. And so the Slides Toolbox that I didn't even mention, probably should have started with this. The Slides Toolbox, lots of things here. If you've got chart tools, so let's go over here to my chart. We have chart tools. We can refresh and update all of your charts that are in there. So it's going to look and see, are there updates for those charts, so that you make sure before you present you get the most recent data that is available. Image tools. Do you want to take your images and reposition them? So if we come over here and we select this image, I can fit to slide dimensions. I can reposition and have it go to a specific place. I can center it on the page. Okay, got it. I can center it on the page. Cancel. So if I click this slide and I click center on page for that page, oops, just kidding, it gives me a deprecated feature warning. So what that means is I need to go up here to Arrangement Tools, Refine Objects of Any Type, and so if I select this slide, then I can center it on the image. Oh, there's a premium version, so maybe all of the Slide Toolbox things may not work. That's interesting. So maybe all of these don't work unless you upgrade to premium. Very interesting. What does it say about upgrading to premium? Slides Toolbox, upgrade to premium. Probably want to start charging me money. How much is upgrading to premium? If I were a professional presenter, oh wow, look at that. $6 forever? Come on. That's so cheap. So for $6 for my life attached to this email address, I could upgrade to premium. That's a great buy. I'm not going to lie to you. I think it is, to have access to all of the things in this slides toolbox. There are things you can do in the slide toolbox without that, but it has these importing and exporting. You've got create slides from multiple files, so you can combine slides from multiple slideshows, create slides from a video. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff in the slides toolbox. And guess when I learned about that today? Sorry, I gave you the answer. Guess when I learned about that? Today. There's a benefit to clicking around, because that is how I learned about that. I was like, slides toolbox, what's that? Okay, so let me talk about add-ons and then we're going to wrap this up. Probably one of the best add-ons as a teacher is this featured add-on right here, and it's called Pear Deck, and it allows you, and I'm not going to do a presentation about Pear Deck. You can go in there and learn about it yourself, but as a teacher, you can add formative assessments and interactive questions to your Google Slides. So rather than having students in your presentations like this, you have students in your presentations like this ready to answer questions. I mean, Pear Deck, if your students have a phone, it is going to eliminate the need for classroom clickers. Think about all the money that's been spent on classroom clickers. Not saying that they're not a great thing. They absolutely are a great thing, and if you have access to them, that's super. But if your students have brought a how many $100 phone into your classroom, why aren't we using those phones for things like this right here? So, add Pear Deck. It's free. I'm going to go ahead and add Pear Deck to this, and it's going to connect to my Google account. You can't see that though. Here we go. Now you can see what's happening. So I'm going to give it the ability to access and allow. And so I'm going to be able to go in, and Pear Deck is now under the add-ons, but it also has this sidebar over here on the left. And so if I go make a new slide, and I want to ask students a question, notice there are some paid versions here. A couple of things that you can't do unless you do paid. So I can add a choice, and multiple choice, we'll go with true, false. And answer 1, 2, 3, update the slide, adding interactive question. And so what this is going to do is this is a Pear Deck oops. So I'm looking down here in the speaker notes, and let me just drag these up a little bit. Let me change our view here. Your current options are, so to edit the type of question, go back to the Ask Students a Question, the Pear Deck sidebar. So it's not super complex to add questions into here, but one thing that you'll note, don't change this ink, Pear Deck Magic, yeah. So that is actually the link to where the question is, if I recall. Nope, that is not. I'm trying to remember exactly where you get your students' answers from. But again, I'm not going to do a presentation about Pear Deck. I'm getting distracted. I just want you to see that there are a ton of add-ons, and Pear Deck now is one of those add-ons that's already installed. And if I go to Get Add-ons, there are a lot of them here. especially for like what your presentations can look like. It's got different icons and things like that. There's the slides toolbox that's already there. And so the last thing I want to talk about, last thing, we're about to be done because I'm out of time, is if you go to File, Publish to the Web, when you share your presentation, okay, most people, in thinking of the way Drive works and all of that, they want to go up here to this share button, and they want to give anyone with the link. So I'm going to show you what the difference is between anyone with the link can view and publishing to the web. Okay, so I'm going to open a new tab, and I'm going to open my presentation, and this is what people see for my presentation, and that's okay. It's not okay with me, okay? It is not okay with me. When I want to share my presentation with others, I want to go to File, Publish to the Web, Link, and click Publish. Yes, I want to publish. And so I'm going to now select that, and I'm going to open a new incognito window. And remember what it looked like a minute ago? Now it looks like this. So that's why you want to send the publish link out to people rather than the shareable link. So sure, you can send that link out to people, but they're going to see something more like what I'm seeing on the screen. They're going to see this version rather than the actual presentation version. So something to think about. I just wanted to be sure I got that in at the very end. I've got less than a minute left, and so what I want to say is I want to say thank you again for being here. I appreciate you watching. I hope this has been useful and there's been good information here. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day. And we are going to sign off with stay along for the ride. We're going into Google Slides, I believe is what I called this one. And so I hope you have an excellent rest of the day. We will see you later. Goodbye. See you next week.